Welcome to Muffin Talk.
Kia ora and welcome to Muffin Talk. This program is brought to you by the initiative Titipounamu, Study and Joy. My guest today is Richard Harward. Richard, welcome to Muffin Talk.
Thank you, Piate.
Richard Harward is a long-time member of Euthanasia Free New Zealand. For many years, he was also a member of the Human Life Committee of the Justice and Peace Commission of the Catholic Diocese of Auckland. Richard, there have been several attempts now to extend the reach of euthanasia in New Zealand. But when we talk about euthanasia, can you first describe on what is euthanasia? Can you describe it with your words?
It means somebody killing somebody else for the claimed purpose of stopping their suffering. Assisted suicide, what is called assisted suicide, is helping them kill themselves. But the Act of Parliament, which legalised this, used the term assisted dying. And they really stole that language from true assisted dying, which is true hospice type care, where death, which is a natural process, is neither hastened nor slowed down, but the person is eased through it, made comfortable, and so on through the process.
So that's the assisting in the dying process, whereas euthanasia would be killing, right?
Yes, but they've taken the term and they use the term assisted dying instead of actually that they're killing people.
So that's like a euphemism, isn't it?
It's a yes.
And so the act is called, can you tell us the name of the act at the moment? What is the name of the act?
The End of Life Choice Act. Several years ago, when it was passed, just before it was passed, the main promoter of the bill, Mr. David Seymour, and others very much wanted to have more in it that finally got through. And in order to get it through, they trimmed it back, and it's more restricted than they had intended or wanted. So now what they're doing is trying to go back to more like the original idea, which is much looser, and makes it one of the worst probably around worldwide. For example, the lack of witnesses. I don't know if anybody watching this has ever made a will. They'll know that under New Zealand law, as I understand it, it requires two people to witness the person making the will. The witnesses have to see the person sign it, and they themselves have to be physically present together in the room and sign it, and they have to see each other sign. And if there's more than one page, those pages are initialed. And yet, for whatever the sparse documentation or form there is to fill in for a person to say that they're willing to be killed, to be put to death, there's no witness required.
Are there any attempts to change this legislation to maybe they just forgot about it and it has to be added?
I don't think so. If anything, it'll probably be made more easy. There are a number of things. I mean, there's a long list of things they're going to try and push through if they're able to. At this stage in the electoral cycle, with an election next year, it's possible that there's pressure to hold off until after the election. I don't know, but there are things that are somewhat dangerous, like having advance directives being made enforceable. The idea being put forward is that people will be able to say, write a document or sign something to say that in certain circumstances they want to be put to death, or they will say receive assisted dying when it's actually being killed, being put to death, and that this should be on a national register and be legally enforceable. The difficulty with that, of course, quite apart from being against doing that at all anyway, as far as being on a national register and enforceable goes, is all the doubts that could arise and miscarriages because of confusion over computer records and people claiming that the person has this documentation, and they may be unable really or unwilling to give consent. Overseas, there was a famous case of a woman who had apparently gone through whatever process there was in the other country to be killed. And the family had gathered, and some medical person came along to do the deed, and she changed her mind, and she had a bit of dementia. As you know, with people with dementia, they go in and out of awareness sometimes. She changed her mind and said, "No, I don't want that." They held her down and killed her anyway. Now, you'd think that the people involved would be in very serious trouble, but in fact, as far as I can gather, the this was looked at by government people and Parliament there, and they really what they did was to facilitate this kind of thing so that people didn't have to give direct consent.
What is your biggest concern when it comes to euthanasia?
There's the broad general concept which which is why I and many others are opposed to it completely. There's the misunderstanding behind the referendum, which was held, whether it would go ahead or not, the law. And there was survey evidence which showed that a lot of people didn't understand that what appeared to be granted by the law was the law already. It didn't need that act to provide it. For example, the people being able to decline treatment, people just being made comfortable and allowed to die. There were a whole lot of people that thought that this was going to be brought in by this law, whereas that was the law anyway. So the referendum was really open to question how fair it was, and I don't think the government of the time did a very good job in putting out public education on it. I'm
But
not
that's always
sure
a
that they.
problem with a referendum because a referendum only works if the people are really informed.
Yes, yes. So I'm opposed to it completely, as are so many other people. In practice, of course, what happens, we know from experience, as we're seeing in this country and where it's happened in other countries, is that there's a tendency, and this has been studied. There was an Oxford-based study years ago, which we warned people about, is that around the world, where in jurisdictions where it's allowed, there's a tendency over time for the number of cases to increase and for the boundaries to be widened. And we see that, of course, you see that in Canada uh, par excellence, you see that. And we see here this pressure for that.
So these cases that you mentioned, like this lady who changed her mind, there are more cases like that? It's not an exception?
Well, we don't really know. This is again as a thing, is the practice of it is shrouded in secrecy. Legally, it's a significant criminal offence to disclose information, quite a lot of circumstances, disclosing information about where it happened, where it was carried out, and who did it, did the deed, and so on. Disclosing that can result in significant criminal legal penalties. You think if it's seen as such a great thing by those pushing it, why are they making it so secret? It's usually a red flag. There's a long list of things that would take up a lot of time to go through.
We are in a civilization where we are all educated in a certain degree. And how come that in this civilization we have the discussion on euthanasia? It seems like there are people who are very much against, very much in favor. And can you tell us more? What does it have to do with today's society that we have this discussion?
I suppose it's to do with a failure of the boundaries that civilization has. That's a more general kind of thing, which is that's why we're against the whole thing. There was somebody who used to give talks on this, who used to start in a dramatic fashion. He was trying to make the point that we're not trying to avoid the reality of death. He'd go up to the microphone and say, "We're all going to die." I thought, now that sounds quite a good opener, but then I thought perhaps not. It might sound threatening, um, but the reality is we're all going to die. We're not trying to do away with the reality of death. The mark of civilization is boundaries, limitations, and directions. Not too many, but enough to foster the dignity of human persons. And the major marker of civilization is respect for life itself. So people live in a suburb wherever you live. Most people, most of the time, respect the areas of other people, their private areas and property and so on, most of the time. Some people break that, but
Yeah.
most that's how we can all live in a city. That's how a million or million and a half or 2 million people can live in Auckland, which is where I live, even though it is fairly large. Yes, because that we accept limitations. Now, the major one of civilization is respect for life itself. And another marker is our social nature, our interdependence. It does relate to what you've said. I heard someone say, referring to the end of life, something like, "Well, I'll do what I want. It's my business only. It's my individual private business." Well, actually, if euthanasia is being discussed, it's not just an individual private matter. It involves other people, directly and indirectly. For example, medical staff, loved ones who may put a brave face on it, but they have to experience the loss of someone. It's more knowing the person has deliberately opted out. A poem by John Donne, No Man is an Island. No man is an island, or woman, but this is the 17th century, entire of itself. Each is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thine own, or of thine friends were. Each man's death diminishes me, man or woman's death, for I am involved in mankind, humankind. Therefore, send not to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. I think at heart, in a lot of cases, there's this where people face the reality of death, they may be facing despair, fear, and of course, they may have fear of suffering. And yet, I've been advised by people who specialise in this area that there's no, and especially in Australia and New Zealand, where there's such great government-provided medical services, that there's no need for people to suffer because that can be managed. The situation can be managed when it comes to the end of life. And as a natural process, there's a whole lot of value in that being managed.
So that's another danger because if there is an easy way out, there's not an, then there won't be enough efforts to improve the painkillers or managing pain.
Yes. So I don't think it's an easy way out, actually, because you look at how it's done, it seems to be appears to be similar to the lethal injection process in the United States, which perhaps people have read about, and where things can go wrong and people can be last for a long time. There was a Canadian doctor over here visiting some years ago. She's done a whole lot of these killings, and she would probably call them assisted deaths, but I would call them killings. And she was asked how long people take to die. She said sometimes it can be hours. You see, what happens is when they're, first of all, as I understand it, and I'm happy to be corrected, but as I understand it, the people are first have something which paralyzes them, essentially, and then something which induces something deadly, whether it's a heart attack or something like that. They can't call out and ask for help. I
Mm.
mean, it's a terrible, terrible thing. Actually. But people possibly look at the person lying there and think, oh, how peaceful they are. Well, they may be in great pain. And I just say that as a cautionary note because it's part of running away from, trying to escape from things.
And you mentioned earlier that when people say that's their private choice and it's a private thing, but when you come like what you mentioned with that lady who had dementia, could be anybody who has some kind of condition where one day you're in a good mood and next day you're not in a good mood and then you change your mind. And if you don't have relatives around, it gets even more dangerous because the more the more frequent the decision is to end somebody's life forcefully, then the more the easier it is when there's nobody who can defend that person who is sick. What can you do?
Yes, yes. Of course, it applies to young people too. Anybody from the age of 18. There was a woman MP from the South Island years ago, Marion Street. She was promoting a bill for this years and years ago, which we managed to, or help in spiking it, and it was withdrawn. But at a talk, she gave a talk, and I understand that she was asked about euthanasia or what they call assisted death for younger people, for children, so on. She said, "Oh, that might be going a bit far at this stage." So make no mistake, there's no the limits just go wider and wider and wider.
That puts a lot of pressure on the doctors also, because how can a doctor decide on life or death like this? Because don't they have an oath that they should protect life?
Yes, and this is another thing that they want, that there are people pushing in a law change to take away a lot of the rights of conscientious objection of medical people, to force hospices and care homes as well as hospitals and so on to provide this on their premises. So this is going to be for religious based or institutions. This is going to be, if this is passed, this is going to be a real test of principle.
So what is the future now? What are the next steps?
I think education and making sure one keeps learning about the topic, contacting MPs in a respectful manner, but just expressing one's concern is, in this country and with our system of government, can be very effective. The other side will be going to see MPs, etc. You can go and make an appointment and go and sit down and see them, but is to have the idea is just have a brief, just to go through it, have a few points, and then give them something. If there's some of the literature available, there's a flyer which
I think that
the
there
people.
is some, we can put a link up for where to get some more resources to get
Yes,
informed. So I
yes,
think that the main thing, as you were talking about a referendum, is to be informed, to continue getting informed of different sources, not just from one source. But as you say, some people twist the language a bit. So that's why it's important to get good sources and good resources for being aware of what is happening.
yes, yes, yes.
Thank you so much, Richard, for this information and for the poem. And so we can, if you don't mind, we can put the poem up on the website. And I wish you all the best with that fight against forceful ending of life, right?
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beate.
Out there, heroic peace is calling. In the bonds of love we meet. For the world, a new day dawning and shining.